Every election since 2008, people have called the creator election. I don't know if you remember like Obama girl in 2008 when Trump was elected 8 years ago. The first influencer president. The Biden election was like backlash to Trump losing his voice through losing Twitter, and all, like everything has been through this lens. And it just keeps getting more intense, right? Why are CPMs so high on podcasts? CPMs are so high on podcasts because you get a host read that's a very authentic host read in their voice. People feel like your thoughts are their thoughts because it's literally pumping directly in your ear while you're talking. Like, podcasts have a $25 or higher CPM for an ad read as opposed to a Instagram story because it's just time spent in influence, right? If you find your business interesting, then there's a nugget of interest there for other people. Now it's just how do you exemplify that through content to build your business? A lot of creators think that they're more famous than they are. They look at their numbers and they're like, I'm famous. And it's like, no, dude, you're creating algorithmically optimized content that if that algorithm went away, nobody would care.
What does the creator economy hold for us as we head into 2025? With so much happening from AI advancements to shifts in monetization models, it can be hard to keep up with all of the changes, making navigating your earning potential feel really overwhelming. That's why we brought in 18-year creator economy veteran Phil Ranta with his unparalleled experience from leading roles at Facebook, Studio 71, and Fullscreen to his current work as the COO at Fixated. Phil's here to help us unravel the web of noise and updates. In this episode, we will cover the biggest shifts creators can expect in 2025 and how to adapt, why AI is shaping the landscape, and how to stand out in an oversaturated market, essential strategies to diversify your income streams and stay profitable, and what creators need to stop doing to remain sustainable and future-proof their businesses. Phil's expertise will leave you with a clear checklist to navigate 2025 and beyond as a sustainable and profitable creator. The Funded YouTuber is brought to you by GigaStar. Inspired by YouTubers like you with the vision to fuel human creativity, GigaStar brings creators and investors together. Phil, the state of the creator economy is all over the place. Can you please help us break it down so we can walk away with like a plan, a budget, money in hand, all of the things?
I can certainly try.
Okay, well, first, I think it's always important. Like, who are you? Why are you qualified to talk about this?
Sure. So, Phil Ranta, I've been in the creator economy for 18 years, started in the MySpace days and worked my way through the many evolutions. Worked at Facebook, was one of the early employees over at Fullscreen, one of the biggest influencer networks in the world at the time. I was the CEO over at Studio 71, where we did The Rock and Rhett and Link and Lily Singh and a lot of other managed talent. And now I'm the CEO at Fixated, where we're building content and infrastructure around creators, along with content services on a per project basis.
Let's reflect for a little bit. Talk to us about what the creator economy has been like, let's say in the last 5, 3, and this past year. Like, what has been so revolutionary about it? What has been so culturally and economically impactful to the point where we created this new term, creator economy? Break it down for us.
Yeah, and in a way, saying the 5-year, 3-year, 6-month is more of a continuum than revolutions, right? Because the platforms change and the size and scale and scope of it all changes. But really, it's kind of something that we know all along and just more people are waking up to, which is social media, the consumption continues growing. Internet connectivity globally keeps growing. The amount of ad dollars going into it keeps growing. The ambitions of young people to become influencers keeps growing, right? I think it's something like 60% of US teens now plan to make money with content creation in their life. That's wild, right? When we were doing this in 2005, people would be like, why are you making videos for the internet? That's stupid. Like, that's not TV. It's just a waste of time, right? People have gotten over that. What now people are realizing more and more is how influential all of this stuff is and how effective it all is. And it's really just for the simple reason that we've all known our entire lives, which is a conversation is more impactful than a piece of media or a billboard, right? Me talking to my mom about why she should buy a toothpaste is more impactful than watching a toothpaste commercial. And when you're a creator and you're speaking directly to camera, or you just have the cool factor where people want to be like you, your endorsement means more than the endorsement of traditional marketing.
So, like, if we were to take a repurposed clip, like that would be it. Like, I feel like that is like a great way to sum up like where we are, and that whole conversation piece is so important, and the influence piece is important. We're recording this like the week after the election in the United States, and there has been so many mixed feelings, so many celebrations, so many like sad things. There's also been a great, incredible study into like, okay, what is it that allowed for the person who won to win and the person who lose to lose? It's like, did like Kamala's like the Kamala HQ TikTok and her social power, all things, did that even matter? Did that count for anything? We watched, there was an episode that Colin and Samir did where they talked about like how this was the podcast election and how they studied the numbers. There was like 124 million views on Trump podcast content, and there was only like 3 or 4 million for Kamala stuff. It's like how these things influence. Again, a conversation is so much more impactful. There's so much more vulnerability. There's so much more raw and thing about it. How is this, like, how did the up to the election, and then we'll talk about heading into 2025, how did the election and all this kind of stuff really shape and mold through the creator economy, and how did it impact the creator economy?
Well, first of all, level setting. Every election since 2008, people have called the creator election. I don't know if you remember like Obama Girl in 2008, but like this happens every single, and like when Trump was elected 8 years ago, it was the first influencer president, and like the Biden election was like backlash to Trump losing his voice through losing Twitter, and all, like everything has been through this lens, and it just keeps getting more intense, right? What's really interesting about this election is I feel like Democrats overwhelmingly were playing a very old school version of digital marketing, right? They were buying a lot of 30-second spots. They were doing well-practiced lines on very controlled formats. Like they were doing incredibly niche down, comparatively, right? Niche down creators like Subway Takes, whereas we've got Trump going on the most massive of the massive mainstream. I mean, you could even see it in the way that they campaigned, right? Trump doing Madison Square Gardens in New York City, where he didn't have a prayer of capturing hearts and minds, as opposed to Kamala going out and doing cafes and diners in swing states. Like,
It was very Obama-esque.
Yeah, well, it's just like if it reeked of 70-year-old campaign consultants who have been doing this since Clinton, going in and saying like, ground game, let's do it. Look, you gotta shake hands, you gotta kiss babies. That's not how people are influenced anymore. And what's really funny is like a lot of the things we know from the digital ad market that prove to be true. Like, why are CPMs so high on podcasts? CPMs are so high on podcasts because you get a host read that's a very authentic host read in their voice. You have a very loyal audience generally. You're in their ear all the time. People feel like your thoughts are their thoughts because it's literally pumping directly in your ear while you're talking. Like, podcasts have a $25 or higher CPM for an ad read as opposed to a Instagram story because it's just time spent in influence, right? So Donald Trump and JD Vance and Elon Musk and all the surrogates going on the biggest podcast where they have 3 hours to just talk and sound normal is extremely valuable in a way that a TikTok from Kamala HQ that's showing her best of rehearsed speeches just isn't anymore. That dirty word, authenticity, right?
And I think that's why the creator economy is so the moment right now. It's all like, didn't you leave my like, Kamala had Taylor Swift's endorsement. She had Beyonce's endorsement. There were celebrities across the board that were like, vote blue, all that stuff. It didn't matter. It didn't matter in a way that it didn't before in the past. Like in the past, that mattered. It doesn't now. And it's so interesting how creators have this influence because they're human. And I feel like which is so weird. And I think, and we talk about heading into 2025 with all this AI and all this stuff, like being human is powerful.
especially for Trump and the way that he is perceived, right? Like all of the arguments were this is the most dangerous person in the world and society will fall if he gets voted in. And then you hear him on a podcast for 3 hours. You hear him on Theo Vaughn and he's kind of just chatting about what it's like to smoke pot, right? And it's like people listen to that and go, wait a second, we survived him for 4 years. The economy was pretty good during that time. You're saying that he's going to be a dictator and he's going to like kill his enemies, and he's like sitting down with Theo Von and laughing. Like he just, in a way, it told the right story in the right way, you know?
And that's, like I said, people are more than memes and clips and all these things. And I don't want to get too in the weeds of these candidates. I want to bring it back, into our creator space. People are so much more than the curated, edited versions of themselves, which is why I really love podcasting. I talk because my business, for the most part, like where I create the most and am my most effective, is not actually in creator education, which is what I know I have a big brand for. It's actually in like business creator. Like, how can businesses do it? And I'm like, I talk to like the most normal people every day, and they have incredible stories that change people's lives, and they impact them in really intentional ways because they painted their house, or they fixed their plumbing, or they cleaned their house up after a flood or a fire. Like,
Right.
there's all of these things. It's those stories, it's those human connections. Because at the end of the day, people don't lead with like, "Hi, I'm Desiree. I'm a this." It's,
Right.
"Hi, I'm Desiree. I'm a human. How can I help you and support you with your life?" And like,
Right.
our kids go to school together, or we live in the same town, or we're neighbors, or like whatever it is. And I think that is what has been so great about the creator economy, and how it has blossomed and thrived in the past, kind of 4 to 5 years, which has been, how do we humanize? How do we connect? How do we support each other through stuff? Because if you think about this era of marketing we're in, started from COVID, right? This horrible, hard thing that the world had experienced together, and people connected and grew and shared because they got online and talked to each other.
Yeah, they had to, right? And like my mom learned how to use Grubhub during COVID, right? Like it's just these very small things where it's like when you're forced to do something, you kind of jump on the curve and you ride it. And like more people started launching podcasts. I've been hearing a lot of stuff coming out of this particular. I swear that this has a broader lesson than the
We're
election.
here for the lesson.
Yes, exactly. We're here for the lesson because I don't want to belabor things as if I'm some sort of prophet, because I didn't know either. Nobody, I would say, knew, but like it's easy to Monday morning quarterback. But I do think that the next kind of big politicians of the future and thought leaders are the people that are doing podcasts now or doing Instagram lives now. I think that a lot of Democrats say, well, why don't we have our own Joe Rogan? You do. His name is Jon Stewart. He just doesn't do it as much, right? And AOC, right? But she's busy legislating. She's doing other things, right? Like having your own Joe Rogan is really about having somebody who's not afraid to go on something and tell the truth that as they see it, and to let emotions drive it a little bit, to be angry when you're angry and to be sad when you're sad, right? Like these are the kind of moments that people are looking for. And I think that those people do exist. I just don't think that the idea of let's find our own Joe Rogan makes sense. It has to take on a different flavor, right? Because the Democrats are going to be in a headier space and they're pickier. And
It's not being afraid to be unfiltered, right? Like the thing that politicians have loved for so much in the past is like these perfectly curated answers and situations. But a podcast is a conversation. Like,
right.
I don't have a list of questions for our talk. I have an outline of what I would like to like kind of go over, but like we're having a conversation, and it's organic and it's natural, and it's being people. And the thing I think most people don't like about politicians in general is that they're not people. And creators are people. Creators are everyday people. Like, I literally am recording this in my basement, right? In the house that YouTube bought me, right? Like I became a YouTuber, and I did a frame business, and I was able to buy myself a house. Like, this is how this happened. But there's a lot of other people out there that have able to that create in the corners of their bedrooms, or while they're nursing their kids, or while they're at work, or on their lunch breaks, in their cars. Like, it's human and normal and relatable, and people want that from, I think, their leaders, in the same way that we want it from our CEOs of companies. in the same way that we want it from celebrities, in the same way that we want it from our guy down the street. Like we need human connection to be able to trust. And
Right,
I
right.
think
And
that
if I
that's
was
what it comes
Gretchen
down
Whitmer
to.
or Gavin Newsom, I would be doing 3 3-hour podcasts a week right now. I know they're busy. I would make the time because if your ambition is to be a president sometime in the next 20 years, the best time to start is yesterday.
Well, honestly, you don't even need to do podcasts. Like you could do
Right.
weekly lives. Just do a weekly
Sure.
live stream to the people, answer questions, talk about stuff, have a little bit of an agenda, and maybe even someone to talk to. So it sounds so awkward, and then just like make it happen. Like and while this was before their acquisitions of it, I always loved that about StreamYard. Like StreamYard would do a weekly podcast for years. Every Sunday, you could come and go live at like 7 p.m. Eastern or something like that. They would go live. They talk about what they're doing. They would share information about themselves. They would answer questions in the chat. Even if they heard the same question every week, they'd always answer it with kindness and like, I'm here to help you and guide you, like kind of a thing. The sooner that our leaders can learn from creators, the better it is. And I think that there's something to be said for all of those pieces. And I don't want to get too much more in the weeds about politics and stuff, but the reason I think it's important for us to have this foundational conversation about that is because there's a really big looming political aspect to this whole move forward. And is what's going to happen to TikTok?
Right.
What do you think?
I actually wrote about this in my newsletter today. If you go to phil.beehive.com, you can subscribe. It's called The Creator Rep. I think that there are a case to be made on both sides, whether it's kept or banned as of January 2025. So Trump has promised now that he will save TikTok and that he will remove the ban. However, he was also the first one that started this whole ban TikTok thing. Biden had to remove that by executive order, right? Because it was a Trump executive order that started this whole thing. I think he keeps it because I think he realizes even more so than he did before the power of social. I think that he knows that the internet is greatly on his side right now, and it can be used, it can be manipulated in the way that to get his message out, to continue growing young male fandom behind the Republican Party. I think he thinks he would be shooting himself in the foot. Plus, he doesn't want to do anything to help Zuckerberg. So, like, he has already said Facebook is the enemy of the people, not TikTok, which tells you where his head's at. I think that the only reason why he would ban it is because we may be starting a trade war with China. We talked about 60% tariffs. They're a big import partner. They're a big export partner. It's a Chinese platform. And depending on how bad relations get based on this trade war that's probably going to happen, it might force his hand into doing this to punish China. We'll see.
So we actually had a little offline conversation before we got started just to warm up the old vocal cords. And one of the things that you said that you are currently dealing with that's been difficult for your clients and customers actually directly has to do with this whole China tariff thing. And it's because you have clients and customers, and these clients and customers are creators and creator brands who rely on China and other things that are imported into America for their livelihoods, because it could be merch, it could be products, it's whatever. How is that part of the creator economy, like what do we have to look forward to in this coming year around it? Not so much from a political standpoint, but just like an overall general consensus.
Tariffs, especially high tariffs, most of the brunt of the cost is passed on to the consumer, right? So a lot of people, when they talk about tariffs, they talk about short-term pain for long-term gain. I think that's a good way of saying it, right? Because the pro-tariff idea is, well, more stuff will have to be manufactured in America, which will help our local economies. The bad part about tariffs is everybody who is building their business in terms of manufacturing in China or getting exports in China or imports in China are going to have pain, right? Agriculture is heavily exported, so a trade war will hurt farmers, right? Auto parts manufacturing, the price of cars are going to go up. When you're talking about the creator economy, when you're talking about products that creators are creating, like print on demand shirts or drop ship things, a lot of that's coming from China. Almost all of it's coming from overseas. Very little of it's made in America. So the price of a influencer t-shirt will go from $20 to $35, and that will price a lot of people out, and they're not going to make more margin. It's just going to be the cost of hard goods that are going to be more expensive. That'll be tough. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the sheer amount of people who their career is heavily predicated on the success of TikTok. From TikTok Shop just to general fame and reach. It's the most preferential algorithm that's out there right now for new creators, right? Because a lot of the other ones are like, keep feeding the famous people. TikTok, you actually have a shot. I'm getting in the FYP from video number one. So we could go back into a rich gets richer creator economy ecosystem that was broken a little bit by TikTok having such a great algorithm. So there's a lot of things that we have to look out for, but ultimately a lot of it is just reprojecting what costs are going to look like, because costs are about to get margins are going to get compressed and costs are going to get a lot higher for a lot of goods that we sell.
Without sounding lame, Phil, like this sounds so unsexy and unfun and uncreative. I don't want to. Yeah, it sounds like such a weird thing to say, but like it's very much like, choices have consequences, but choices and benefits, right? Like there's goods on both sides. But it's just so interesting to think about how, as creators, like, oh, I work on YouTube and I do this thing on YouTube, and this is my job to do this thing on YouTube. Never, like, you don't tend to think about the bridges and like how things will change and affect going forward, especially as culture changes and situations changes. Again, because of COVID, the creator economy exists. Before, you were just a YouTuber or a social media person. The creator economy exists because of COVID. It's going to be really interesting to see how this next shift happens. So I'd love for us to like take a pivot with our conversation and talk about the cycles of marketing and like what we as creators can expect for this next cycle. So when we talk about cycles of marketing, we have to think about how things, especially with the internet era, happen in kind of 5-year chunks. And the best example is like the 2010s, that was the Facebook era. The 2015s, that was the Instagram era. I would even argue the 2020s, that like this is the TikTok era. What are we going to see going forward in 2025 that are the things that creators should be digging into and building out to be successful?
Luckily, there's a bajillion ways to answer this, but I feel like I've got my top 3, right?
Okay.
So one is with the prevalence of AI and how incredibly cheap AI has gotten, there is going to be a content glut, right? It's going to get, I mean, I've been pitched a million times these platforms that say, we can create 10,000 trend optimized short form pieces of content and have it auto uploaded for $150. Wouldn't you love that for your brand? And my answer is always, no, that sounds awful. Like, don't we want one piece of content to hit instead of just all of this like garbage being poured out? But a lot of people are going to take that tack. So it's going to be a war between platforms and AI, which means anybody that's making content that AI can do capably and well should very quickly shift. And I consider that to be any content that's like faceless, voiceover-y, that kind of stuff that's very popular right now. Probably want to start bringing more of your personality into it or start to bridge that. That's going to hit a lot of people really hard. And the people that it's going to hit hard are those who depend on virals, those who depend on faceless crafting videos, video essays, that kind of stuff, right? Caution, CPMs are about to go down significantly unless the platforms can find a way to fully combat AI very quickly, because it's going to be a lot of supply. Demand is not going to increase with that. 2 is the creators that are able to survive the AI revolution need to find ways to get money that's not just ad inventory, even more so than before, right? We're already talking about cookie death and all of those things and how CPM rates have gone down and yada, yada, yada. I think it's going to get a whole lot. I don't think CPMs are going up. I think CPMs are going to keep going down. I think that creation is going to outpace demand greatly. But in the meantime, creators are finding awesome ways to bring in community and affiliates and conversion and TikTok Shop and all that stuff where they can like have a little bit of control. I'm bullish on newsletters. I always have been, right? I've been trying to get creators to focus on newsletters more since like 2006. And I've sounded like a boomer back then. Imagine me now, right? But like newsletters are a way to have email addresses, to know that you're in people's inboxes every single week, to be able to like show your content and say, this is what I did this week in case you missed it. It's like a great way to get more of a direct connection with your fan bases. And I think that creators are really going to have to get scrappy about how they can circumvent the platforms and brand revenue to do that.
It's really fun too about newsletters is that we have fun new ways to make newsletters. Like it's not just like, I need you to I'm going to give you this digital product in exchange. You can give me your name and email and I'm going to sell it to you till you die. Right? Like, it's not that kind of thing. Like, I really love the Substack Beehive era. One of my favorite creators, and I've talked about her a lot. I love Coco Melon. I love how she does, not Coco Melon. She does this great weekly Substack, and it's like pay like for $5, and she's a podcast, and so like you can listen to the first half for free, but then Coco Moco, that is it, and then the second half is for the patrons. It's $5. It's $5 a month for me to like
Great.
get this really great, well researched, deep dive insight into like a pop culture and social concept, and her emails are really helpful, and it's all in Substack. And I'm like, I think it's like if blogging had a social component to it, and it's really smart. And I know Beehive has something as well too, so it's not just emails anymore. For those that are like about it, there's another like funner, sexier way to do it.
And like Laylo and community being able to do it through SMS. I think that the most important part is just like controlling a little bit more. I always hate owning your audience because you never own your audience, but getting closer to your audience, I think, is going to be key. And I think the third thing that creators really need to look at is as CPMs go down and there's more competition, you just have to distribute more broadly. The idea of cannibalization has been proven to be a lie over and over and over again. If you upload something on YouTube and you upload it on Facebook, the cannibalization is darn near zero, and you have a better chance of hitting the algorithm. So people who have funnels and structures built up where they're able to be in a little bit of everywhere all of the time and be able to monetize a little bit of everywhere all the time and do it capably and do it speaking the language of the platforms that they're on are going to do far better than, say, Twitch streamers who all they're doing is Twitch.
Do you think that it's important to create uniquely for each platform, or is it okay to repurpose?
I think that it's a little bit of both, right? Like, let's say podcasts, a great example. I think podcasts do very well on audio mediums. I think they do very well on YouTube. I think cut downs for some podcasts do very well on TikTok. If you have like those killer 30-second soundbite kind of podcasts, like even if you look at something like Rogan, like he's able to do cut downs really well because oftentimes there'll be moments like Elon Musk smoking pot on his podcast, right? And those like just make good clips, right? If you're somebody who's like a video essayist, for example, who's doing like 45-minute deep dives, a little bit trickier, right? Because there's like, it has to be like a core long form platform. And if there's not those poppy short moments, or it's too dependent on the visuals to go audio, or even for OTT and fast channels, like if you're not 100% copyright cleared, right? A lot of people will claim fair usage on YouTube, and then the platforms that really have something to lose if they get sued go, whoa, 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 whoa. If you don't have the rights to every single bit of it, then you can't do it here. It's a little bit more of a challenge. I'd say that the most important thing to do is, while you're thinking about your content creation, to be thinking multi-platform. And if there's ways that you can tweak it, I always talk about Jimmy Fallon and how he changed late night. Like Jimmy Fallon was the first late night host that he designed his show to be optimized for YouTube. He made his 5-minute segments great standalone 5-minute segments. You don't need to know much about it. It's like very viral. It's weird juxtapositions of getting celebrities to do weird things. Everything feels like a YouTube video. And I feel like everybody needs to think of that way of like, is there a tweak I can make that makes this feel more like a podcast or more like a TikTok or X, Y, and Z? And then it becomes my fun thing as a COO, which is it's a workflow problem, right? How do you make sure that you're repurposing efficiently and telling the right story and building the right team around it so that you're not losing your shirt on every deal?
No, I think it's smart. I think it's an effective thing to do. What do you think are some unsung, untapped money-making things that creators should be looking into?
The number one thing that everyone's sleeping on right now is Snap Stories monetization. Oh my gosh, is that profitable? But it requires a lot of work. At Fixated, we're doing this on an agency level, so we're helping people go to market with their Snap Stories. But you have to do like 50 to 100 posts a day because you only get an ad every 7 snaps. It's a lot. And yes, you can repurpose some stuff and you can make it work, but a lot of it is kind of that Instagram story, like authentic thing. And and putting text over things and contextualizing is really important. And you kind of need like a real-time editor to be doing that, or else you're going to be spending 2 or 3 hours a day doing that. Most creators can't do it. So huge money-making opportunity. There's still a lot of scarcity there because not a lot of people are doing it well. So that really is like a build out a team and you can do it right. I still feel like a lot of people are sleeping on live and podcasts. I don't think it's any surprise to you as somebody who does podcasts, but like people think of podcasts as an afterthought a lot. Like creators go, I'll do a podcast because it's easy. Podcasts monetize so well and the audience is so lean in, and lives, even though you're like, well, I get 1 million views on my YouTube and I'm only getting 500 concurrents on my live, so why would I do a live? Those 500 concurrents feel like they're having a real-time conversation with you because they are. It's just a different thing, right? It's kind of like when people talk about LinkedIn marketing and they're saying like, well, on YouTube I can get 1 million views for the same price I can get 100,000 views on LinkedIn. It's like, yeah, but on LinkedIn, they're founders, they're CEOs, they're college educated, they're $150,000 a year net income plus, right? Like, it's just a different set of eyeballs. So yeah, I mean, I would love to see more creators adopting more kind of like conversational content. In the age of AI, that's the only thing that's going to separate the humans from the machines. Not to sound too Terminator 2 about it, but that's defensible, right? People liking you as a human, and the way to get you to like them as a human is to have that conversation.
I think one of the other things that the vast majority of creators are missing out on is having a service business.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is something wildly like stable about having a brand that you can build, that your individual or your like online persona can really like support but not be dependent on. Like I talk about this a lot, how like what Mark Rober is building as the Mark Rober brand is not sustainable, but what he's building with Crunch Labs, that is sustainable. Because if his face dies, if something happens to him, or his was science experiment gone bad, he's got Crunch Labs that that can still exist, that his company can still use, his family can still use, and he can legacy build off of. I became a creator to support my business.
Right.
It literally is like they're hand in hand. And I think that obviously more businesses should be utilizing creator opportunities and like how can we effectively be here versus thinking of social as an afterthought or this thing that's like, I just this thing I passively do and I'm not intentional about it. It's like bring it all together, but I really
that part
think
is almost more interesting to me, right? Because like it would be great if more creators were service businesses, but also a lot of creators suck at business, right? They're good creators, and like you say, hey, you know so much about TikTok, why don't you do like a TikTok like course and do lesson building? And they would not know. A lot of them would not know how to do it. Whereas I look at the S&B mowings of the world, which is like little lawn mowing outfit, decided to start doing free lawn mowing on the worst yards and posting it to Facebook, goes insanely viral, makes way more money from the videos than they do from the lawn mowing. At this point, do you think S&B mowing is even mowing lawns, or do you think that they're taking their 200 grand a month and pocketing it and just doing these like not-for-profit lawn mows, right? Like, I feel like that's valuable, because if you find your business interesting, then there's a nugget of interest there for other people. Now it's just, how do you exemplify that through content to build your business, you know?
I also feel like when we head into this next era, I think the best thing that creators and YouTubers specifically can do to be effective is you have to think in mind, like YouTube started in 2006, right? We're almost at what, 20 years, right? This is 18 years of this weird horizontal vertical, like, why are we talking about our lives on the internet like era? I think as we head into the next thing, is like we have to stop thinking of ourselves as YouTubers, and we have to stop thinking of ourselves as creators. We have to start thinking of ourselves as entrepreneurs. We are a product. Like, it's when you break it down, when you look at it from a business perspective, this podcast is a product. Yep. My YouTube channel is a product. Those TikToks are a product. And it's something that, and you as the face of it are a product. You have to figure out, how do I build a business? You are building a business. It's the only industry, it's the only space that when people talk about like, I run my own business, I'm a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur, no, I'm a creator, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a TikToker. Don't put me in that of their box. But I'm like, no, that's
Mhm.
what you are. You're a business owner, because once you start making money, that's where it happens. I think if we can
Oh, yeah.
adopt more business acumen, we would do so much better.
No, totally. And I think that being wide-eyed about what your superpower is, because I would say some channels, yes, are very much products. I think some channels are also shelf space, right? And I think that more and more, like, if somebody realizes that all they are is a marketer and that their content really has no value outside of their ability to optimize for an algorithm, and like they just know how that their content does sell. Like, I would say finance creators are heavily shelf space, not product, right? A lot of them are, it's a very directed, like, here's what I want you to do next, and what I want you to do next makes me money, right? There, it's very, very salesy, even if they put it, couch it within entertainment, right? The more people realize what they have and what they can play with, the better that they can build a business around themselves. A lot of creators are pretty convoluted about what they actually have. Like, a lot of creators think that they're more famous than they are. They look at their numbers and they're like, I'm famous. And it's like, no, dude, you're creating algorithmically optimized content that if that algorithm went away, nobody would care. Nobody would think of you ever again. I don't care if you have 3 million followers. Nobody would say, oh, I miss this person, right? That person is shelf space. They're not a product, right? A product is somebody who's just like, I could put it on a fast channel and people would follow it because they love the content so much, you know.
Super right.
It's
No,
pretty wild, yeah.
we live in a wild world. We've talked a lot about like what we can do to go forward and grow and pay attention to. What do you think is going away? What should we stop doing to can be effective and financially savvy in the new world of content creation 2025?
I think that the creators that are kind of going in out without a plan and just happening to go viral and then just kind of winging it and having fun, and I think that's going away. I think there's just like one thing that the Mr. Beastification of the internet did was made optimization tactics incredibly transparent and building a roadmap for the next generation. Um, there's just very little room for sloppy thumbnails anymore. If you want to hit like that big audience now, you just don't see it as much. Like, the idea of Jenna Marbles doing what Jenna Marbles did and becoming famous again seems unthinkable now. Like, no microphones, generally just a screen grab from what she was doing, non-optimized titles. Like, she could still be creating killer content, but it would be really hard to find that initial audience. So, like, I think that like these stumbled upon creators are going to be much fewer. Some will still break through, but it'll be much fewer. And these kind of deliberate, I realized I wanted to be a YouTuber and I spent 80 hours a week for 3 years while I was in high school, really figuring out the game and then went and did it. I think that that's going to become more the norm, which is a bummer for someone like me that likes the art aspects of digital media, right? Like, are we going to be able to get another "Don't hug me, I'm scared" out of this algorithm? Hate to say it, but probably not. And that's a bummer.
I think it's because it's becoming a job.
Yeah.
Like, it's something that you can do, you can study, and you can insert yourself into in the same way that you can become a lawyer or a scientist or a teacher.
Right. But I like my art passion driven. I don't like whenever I talk to a creator and all they want to talk about is money, which happens all the time when you're on the management side. And when you start talking about content, it clearly bores or annoys them, or they only talk about it in terms of optimization of the algorithm. I get sad. I really do. And oftentimes I will tell a creator that, where it's just like, do you like to do this? Or is this like, and sometimes they say, no, I just realized I could make a lot of money doing it. And I'm like, great. Now I know your game. Now I know how to make your roadmap. But I don't want too much of that because I want unique, awesome voices to break through and create something interesting that inspires people or changes that. Like, that's why I got into this business. I didn't get into this business to have everybody sell Colgate in every video. Like, that's just not interesting to me.
Or Squarespace. Squarespace isn't every video, right?
It's everywhere. But I do love Squarespace as a service. This is not paid for, but I use them.
So funny. Not an ad. But no, I think it's important. Like, this has been a really interesting conversation. Like, being able to think about like where we've been and like what we can look forward to doing heading into the new year, new era, new administration. It's been a little scary, a little bit uncertain. It's been a little like overwhelming and out of our control. But I think it's about reining in and controlling what you can control, which is your messaging, which is where and how you communicate, and just being mindful of how you're spending your time intentionally, and that making sure that you're attaching income goals to the things that you're doing.
Yeah. And if you're going to run for president, Gretchen Whitmer, start your podcast today. I'll be on it. I'll get you some more good followers.
She's not far from where I am. I'm in Michigan, so I'm going to do a big grad. Just get you on. You and your
Granville, born and raised. So I bleed Michigan too.
Yeah. It's like, let's get you and little Gretch, your little Gretch Barbie governor on. We'll be set to go. Being perfect. So. All right, awesome, Phil. Well, again, we're going to have the links over to where you can go connect with Phil, which is always on LinkedIn. And he is amazingly great and informative newsletter that I get and I read every week. It's a very great way to stay up to date with what's happening on like the more business side of the creator economy, in the way that like Colin and Samira, like what's happening in the creator economy. So if you want to get a comparison. So I appreciate you so much, Phil. Thank you so much for your time, your talent, your sharing of information. Until next week, everyone, go make that money. Peace. The Funded YouTuber is brought to you by GigaStar, a parent company of GigaStar Market, an SEC-registered funding portal, and member of FINRA. Learn more at gigastar.io. Neither GigaStar nor its affiliated companies provide legal, regulatory, financial, or tax advice. Any opinions expressed herein are those of the authors and are the informational purposes only. The information and opinions expressed herein are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investments, objectives, financial situation, or needs of any specific investors.